Germany produced 425,000 STG-44 assault rifles between 1943 and 1945. They made 14 million Kar-98K bolt-action rifles in the same period. The STG-44 was the best infantry weapon of World War II. German soldiers who got one loved it. Allied soldiers who faced it feared it, and it came too late to matter. But what if it hadn't? What if Germany had mass-produced the STG-44 starting in 1942, giving their infantry 2 extra years with the world's first true assault rifle? Would it have changed the outcome of the war? The answer is more complicated than you think, and it reveals something crucial about why Germany lost World War II that has nothing to do with tanks or planes. Let me show you what would have actually happened. First, we need to understand what made the STG-44 revolutionary. This wasn't just another gun, it was a completely new concept in infantry weapons. Every army in World War II used the same basic system. Riflemen carried bolt-action rifles for long-range shooting, and some soldiers carried submachine guns for close combat. 2 weapons, 2 different roles, 2 different ammunition types. The STG-44 replaced both with a single weapon. It fired a new intermediate cartridge, the 7.92 by 33 mm Kursk, that sat right between pistol and rifle power. Less recoil than a full-power rifle round, more punch than a submachine gun. Effective range of 300 meters, which perfectly matched actual combat distances on the Eastern Front. Rate of fire between 500 and 600 rounds per minute in full auto or accurate semi-automatic fire when needed. 30-round detachable magazine, one weapon that could do everything. The tactical advantage was enormous. A German squad armed with Kar-98K rifles could fire maybe 40 aimed shots per minute combined. The same squad with STG-44s, over 300 rounds per minute, 8 times the firepower. And unlike submachine guns, those rounds were effective beyond 50 meters. So why didn't Germany produce it earlier? The historical timeline shows the problem. Development began in 1942 as the Machine Carabiner 42, or MKB 42. But Hitler personally rejected it. He wanted rifles, proper rifles, with long range and stopping power. He dismissed intermediate cartridges as a waste of resources. The weapon was redesigned and tested as the MP-43, then the MP-44, with production starting in limited numbers in 1943. Only in 1944 did Hitler approve it fully and give it the designation Sturmgewehr 44, Assault Rifle 44. By then, Germany was already losing the war. If production had started seriously in early 1942 instead of 1944, Germany could have produced 1 to 2 million STG-44s by the time the war ended, instead of 425,000. That's enough to equip most of their infantry divisions. Now, let's see what that actually would have meant in practice. Scenario 1. Mass production beginning early 1942. Let's put these weapons in German hands before the disasters of Stalingrad and Kursk. Where would it matter most? The Eastern Front, 1942 to 1943. This is where the STG-44's advantages would shine. Soviet infantry tactics relied heavily on mass assaults, human wave attacks supported by artillery and armor. German defenders with bolt-action Kar-98Ks struggled to generate enough firepower to stop these charges, especially in winter when cold made operating a bolt-action rifle nearly impossible with frozen fingers. Give those same defenders STG-44s with selective fire and 30-round magazines, and the math changes. Soviet infantry advancing across open ground would face withering fire from weapons that could switch from semi-automatic sniping to full automatic suppression instantly. The firepower advantage would be substantial. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's take a specific battle. Stalingrad, August 1942 to February 1943. Urban combat at ranges between 10 and 50 meters. The Soviets dominated close quarters fighting with their PPSH-41 submachine guns, which had 70-round drum magazines and high rates of fire. German soldiers with bolt-action Kar-98Ks were at a severe disadvantage in room-to-room fighting. An STG-44 would have been perfect for this environment. Selective fire for close combat, accurate semi-automatic fire for longer streets, enough magazine capacity to suppress enemy positions. German infantry units with STG-44s would have held buildings longer, inflicted higher casualties, and potentially maintained better defensive positions in the urban nightmare of Stalingrad. They might have delayed Soviet advances by days or even weeks in certain sectors. Individual tactical engagements would have gone better for Germany. But would it have changed the outcome of the battle? Almost certainly not. The German Sixth Army was surrounded, cut off from supplies, starving, and freezing in -40-degree temperatures. Better small arms don't solve encirclement. They don't bring food or fuel or winter clothing. Stalingrad was lost because of operational and strategic failures, not because German riflemen couldn't shoot fast enough. Let's jump forward to July 1943, the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank engagement in history, Germany's last major offensive on the Eastern Front. Hypothetically, German infantry divisions are now equipped with STG-44s. What changes? Defensive warfare against combined Soviet armor and infantry assaults. The STG-44's 300-meter effective range is ideal for supporting German tank operations and defending against Soviet infantry. Better suppressive fire means German infantry can hold positions longer under attack, can support armored counterattacks more effectively, and can inflict higher casualties on advancing Soviet forces. The tactical impact would be noticeable. German infantry casualties would likely be reduced. Defensive positions would be harder to overrun. The assault might have penetrated slightly deeper into Soviet defenses before being stopped, but penetrated slightly deeper doesn't mean victory. The Soviets had numerical superiority, better tanks in many categories by 1943, and increasingly effective air support. German infantry with assault rifles can't shoot down IL-2 Sturmovik ground attack aircraft. They can't stop T-34 tanks without anti-tank weapons, and they can't overcome the fundamental problem that the Soviets could replace losses and Germany couldn't. Here's where we need to talk about the Soviet response. Because the Soviets weren't static, they adapted to every German innovation throughout the war. When Germany introduced better tanks, the Soviets built better tanks. When Germany developed new tactics, the Soviets countered them. They would absolutely respond to a German assault rifle. The Soviet Union manufactured 6 million PPSH-41 submachine guns during the war. If faced with German assault rifles in 1943, they could have increased that production further. They were already developing intermediate cartridge weapons. The SKS carbine and the early prototypes of what would become the AK-47 were in development by 1944. Faced with a German assault rifle threat in 1943, Soviet weapons development would have accelerated. More importantly, the Soviets would have adapted tactically. Heavier preliminary artillery barrages before infantry assaults. More aggressive use of armor to suppress German infantry. Tactical changes to minimize exposure to German fire. The Red Army was learning and improving throughout the war. They wouldn't just accept higher casualties without adapting. Even with STG-44s in mass production from 1942, Germany still loses World War II at roughly the same time and in roughly the same way. The margins would be different. Specific battles would have different outcomes. German infantry would be more effective, but the strategic situation was hopeless regardless of what rifle they carried. And that brings us to the greatest irony of the STG-44 story. The weapon came too late to save Germany. Only 425,000 were produced before the war ended. German soldiers loved them, but they couldn't change the outcome. Germany was defeated in May 1945. And then something interesting happened. Soviet forces captured stockpiles of STG-44s and German weapons designers. Among those studying the captured assault rifles was a young Soviet weapons designer named Mikhail Kalashnikov. He examined the STG-44's design, its intermediate cartridge concept, its operating system, and in 1947 he introduced the Automat Kalashnikova Model 1947, the AK-47.
The AK-47 wasn't a direct copy of the STG-44, but it was absolutely influenced by it. Same intermediate cartridge concept, same assault rifle roll, similar operating principles adapted and simplified for Soviet production methods. The weapon Germany needed in 1942 but couldn't deploy in time became the blueprint for the most successful military rifle in human history. Today, over 100 million AK-47 variants exist worldwide, more than any other firearm. The assault rifle concept, pioneered by Germany and embodied in the STG-44, became the standard for infantry weapons globally. Every modern military uses assault rifles based on the same principles. So what's the takeaway? The STG-44 was a revolutionary weapon that came too late. If Germany had mass-produced it starting in 1942, their infantry would have been more effective tactically. Specific battles might have gone differently. Casualties might have been lower. The war might have lasted slightly longer in certain theaters, but Germany would have still lost. Because wars aren't won by individual weapons, no matter how good they are. Wars are won by economics, resources, industrial capacity, manpower, and strategic decision-making. Germany lacked all of these advantages by 1942. An assault rifle couldn't fix that. What it could do, and did do, was change infantry warfare forever, just not in time to save the army that created it. The weapon that could have helped Germany became the weapon that armed their enemies for the next 50 years. And maybe that's the real lesson of the STG-44. Innovation matters, but timing, resources, and strategy matter more. You can have the best weapon in the world and still lose the war if everything else is working against you.